The thylakoids, those discs, the mentos, they're going to be another location where reactions are going to occur. This is actually where you find the chlorophyll. And this is the site, all right, of mainly what you think of as photosynthesis. This is the sunlight portion, all right? The thylakoids have the sunlight portion where the sun actually gets captured, the sun actually gets used, and we tend to think of that as being the real deal of photosynthesis. But part of it is going to happen in the stroma as well. The granum are just stacks, all right? So when we talk about what happens in the thylakoids, same thing as what's happening in the granum. The granum is just many thylakoids. So if we start to look into chloroplasts, they're the organelle responsible for photosynthesis. They're taking carbon dioxide and taking water, and they're going to turn it into carbs. They're going to turn it into glucose, all right? Chloroplasts contain a pigment. A pigment is a light absorbing, all right? Absorbing is a very, very important word here, all right? Pigments absorb sunlight. That means that the chloroplast has something in it that's going to absorb the sunlight. It's going to help trap the sunlight for photosynthesis. So, before we move on, we're going to talk about why leaves are green. All right, well, what you wind up with are these pigments, all right? And the important thing to think about is how these pigments operate. If, bear with my bad drawings, if we have a plant, hopefully everybody can see the shade of green. If we have a plant, all right, when you look at the plant, all right, you see green. That's because when the sun, sorry I don't have yellow. When the sun shines down, the sun shines white light. White light is all of the light combined. And when the sun shines the light down, the plant pigments, which are chlorophyll, absorb all of that white light, except for that green. The green is the part that gets reflected. The green is the part that bounces off. And when it bounces off, it bounces to your eyes, and you see green. So when somebody's wearing a red sweatshirt, that means that the dyes, the pigments in their sweatshirt, are absorbing everything but red. Red bounces off, red hits your eyes, you see red. All right, so when we see color, it's because that shade of light, that specific wavelength of light is what's being bounced off, what's not being absorbed. So that's how we see it. Now, we should know about Roy G. Biv, right? That all the color spectrum of light combined is what gives us white light, and we're able to see colors because of the different pigments that are found in items or in living things or in objects. Oops, sorry about that. So, important thing to remember, all right, is that pigments are the light absorbing, but you see, all right, what does not get absorbed. What does not get absorbed is what we see. And plants contain chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs all of the wavelengths except green and a little bit of yellow. That's why you get like the light green, light green as opposed to a dark green. So, when we start talking about the particular types of pigments, think about it. Do leaves always stay the same color? No. Every fall, they change color. So, how do they change color? What does that mean in terms of what we see? Because that means that when we see red leaves in the fall, they're absorbing different wavelengths and bouncing off different wavelengths. That's because plants don't only have chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is their dominant pigment. It's their strong pigment. It's the one that steps forward and says, look, here I am. But there are always other pigments hiding in the background. So, like I said, chlorophyll is primary, all right? That's that primary pigment, the strong pigment, all right? It's going to absorb the reds, the blues, all right? The colors except for greens and yellows. But then we have something called carotenoids. And when I say carotenoids, think about a carrot. What color is a carrot? Carrot orange, right? That means a carotenoid is going to be responsible for absorbing different wavelengths, reflecting different wavelengths, therefore giving different colors. So the neat thing to think about is if I were to think about this in terms of a graph, all right, and I were to look at this as being wavelength, right, wavelengths of light being absorbed, or amount being absorbed, and then we're talking about the color spectrum, Roy, G, Viv. If I talk about chlorophyll, chlorophyll should be absorbing everything but the yellow and the green, which would mean that it's absorbing, it's absorbing, it's absorbing, and then it kind of starts to do poorly with the absorption. But then it's going to absorb and absorb and absorb again, right? Absorbs everything but the yellows and the greens. That means that it misses out, right? All of that empty space it misses out on. What if you had something, another backup pigment, that didn't really do so well with the reds, didn't really do so well with the oranges, but it absorbed this stuff as well? If you had both of them on a leaf or in a plant, there'd only be a really small little amount that you'd be missing out on. Everything else would be absorbed. More sunlight you absorb, more photosynthesis means more food. Sounds good to me. Then you need to take into consideration the idea of plants grown in the shade. Plants grow in the shade have larger leaves. Have you ever looked at the size of leaves on the bottom of the forest floor? They're huge versus at the top, right? So this leaf here would be located at the top of the tree. This leaf here on the same exact tree would be located near the bottom, right, on the undersides. The bottom leaves are going to grow and spend their energy being wider, taking up space, reaching out for any little bit of sunlight that makes it through. The ones at the top, they don't need to waste their energy taking up lots of space. They got plenty of sunlight. They need to worry about being thick, being able to retain water, having a waxy coating so that they don't evaporate and lose a lot of water and dry out. So depending on where a plant is, it's going to basically grow and develop and change based on its requirements for photosynthesis. Plants in the shade are going to grow nice and wide and spread out so that they can get any little bit of sunlight. Plants that are in full sun, they don't need to be really big and wide. They need to be thick, all right, retain water.